Let's talk about, what are we talking about? Negotiation? So, oftentimes people think that a negotiation is just about the price. What you need to understand in regards to a real estate transaction, every single part of it is negotiable, from the real estate agent's fee, whether or not the real estate agent is involved, the price, the terms. Let's expand on the terms. Who the lender is, what the terms of the loan are, if it's contingent upon another sale, if it's contingent upon financing, when the closing date is, what title company will be used, what home warranty company, is there a home warranty? So that's just an example, and I could probably go on for another 30 or 40 things that you could negotiate. Even what day do we close and what day do I get the keys to the property, right? The possession versus the closing date. But that's just to give you an example, because I find that a lot of times when people are selecting an agent, here's where it's important. When you're selecting an agent, I find that people think either, one, I can handle my own negotiations because I kind of know what I expect and what I want, and so that's no big deal. There's not a lot of value in that. I find that when we represent people properly, that they realize about 15 or 20 different things that we negotiate properly usually puts a couple $1,000s back on their side of the ledger. If those things are considered as part of the negotiation when you're hiring an agent, shouldn't you be thinking about those things? I never find that a consumer isn't smart enough or isn't a good enough negotiator. It's number one, about knowing what's possible. Number two, knowing what's customary. If I know that every single time in this market that we can reduce closing costs or get rid of the warranty or ask for no repairs on a transaction, that's absolutely thousands of dollars. A negotiation just isn't what price will I accept. It's every single time someone opens their mouth and represents you, are they giving away leverage or are they keeping leverage? All right, so we're talking about leverage, right? So leverage, and the key is knowing exactly how much you have. In a transaction, whenever we're looking at how much we're gonna give, how much we're gonna keep, whether or not we take a price, whether or not we do what the buyer wants us to do, we look at leverage all the time. So one of the things that I find that people need me to do most is keep track of how much leverage we currently have. So the market sets the pace, and when a home sells, we're gonna find out how much leverage do we have, how quick did it sell, how many people were trying to buy it, and do we have to give in to any of the demands of the current buyers. So what we do typically is we find the clients will say, do I have to do this? Do I have to give them $3,000? Do I have to bring my price down? Do I have to take this offer? And based on our current leverage, we might say, absolutely not. You don't have to do any of these things. So the key to negotiations is knowing how much leverage you have and then using it all the time, but also maintaining that leverage in a transaction. Now, I want to also point out that a negotiation does not mean that you never give anything. Sometimes people hire me and they think, I want you to make sure that I never do anything on behalf of the buyer. Well, that's not a negotiation. That's terrorism, and that's not exactly what we would promote. All right, so let's talk about a couple real life examples when it comes to the negotiations and what people are looking for when they hire an agent. So what I have found is that a lot of the nuances of communication are not exactly taken advantage of either. In a world where text and email are very predominant, what we find is negotiations are mishandled, and then a lot of stuff is left on the table. An example, this week, we called the agent involved in the transaction because we were going to give a little bit to make the deal happen. So let's say in this example, we were going to give them $5,000. Now I call the agent and say, man, this deal is kind of at a standstill. We're trying to figure out how to put it together. And I know that I'm about ready to give this person $5,000. The agent starts talking. Well, we want to keep it together. We want to do what we can. I think I can get. And so during that conversation, what happens, the agent gives up the position, tells us that they can put it together for the price, asks zero questions about our willingness to give. And I hung up the phone thinking I had $5,000 to give. Now I don't have to give it. And the client, of course, is happy about that. Now, sometimes we give the $5,000. It's not always about playing chess until the last person has given $1. It's really not the deal. But if you can leverage all communication and actually pick up the phone and say, where are we at? You can find out things about a transaction that you don't always know. All right, so we had a past client that reached out and he called me to hire me. And he said, I want to hire you, but not for the reasons that you might think. And I said, that's kind of strange. Tell me more. He said, I want you to help us find a house, and we think you're the best negotiator. I said, well, that's a nice compliment, so I guess I'll take that. What else? He said, well, actually what we realized is we really wanted you to be our agent, but more than anything, we didn't want you to be on the other side of the transaction. And so that's why it was important to hire you. I'm going to take that as a compliment as well. So, but when it comes to the negotiation piece of it, it can be a part of the transaction where people perceive it as arguing, or people see that as a disagreement. But in reality, all that is making sure that you have a good command of what contracts say, you have a good understanding of what's customary in a market, and you understand how much leverage you have. Those are three things that we've talked about throughout this video. And when someone has that, just like a good attorney, if you've ever been in a situation where you go to your attorney and say, should I take this deal? And the attorney might say, this is a good deal, you should take this deal. That's a good negotiation tactic as well if you've gone as far as you possibly can. So if you find that you're working with someone in any scenario where you don't know that they're willing to push that line on your behalf, never risking the transaction and never putting you in a bad position, but knowing and establishing where that line is the key to being a good negotiator.